Yakov Mamzhi is a student at Georgetown University School of Medicine and the grandson of a Holocaust survivor. Here, he tells his grandfather's story and explains how it influenced him to enter the field of medicine.
So my grandfather, Moritz, was born in Lodz, Poland in 1919. He had two loving parents, four brothers, two sisters, and lived a really happy childhood in an Orthodox Jewish home. And that all changed in September of 1939 when the Germans invaded Poland. They eventually made it to his home city of Lodz, where about 230,000 Jews lived at the time. And by February of that next year, he found himself forced into the Lodz ghetto, where he lived in absolutely terrible conditions. Two of his siblings actually passed away in the ghetto, but he managed to pull through and survive. And eventually the Germans told him that he would be moved to a Polish farm to work. And little did he know at the time he was actually being transferred to the worst place imaginable at the time, which was Auschwitz. So when he arrived at Auschwitz, he was separated from the rest of his family and underwent the infamous selection process with Dr. Mengele. While he was in Auschwitz, he was tortured, he was mutilated, he was starved, and he wrote in his memoir that he was immediately forced to take off his clothing and march in the freezing cold weather to Auschwitz-Birkenau. I don't know how he did it, but he survived. He worked harder than he's ever worked, and eventually he was transferred to a different labor camp where he worked in a rubber factory. And so when I think of the suffering that he endured during the Holocaust, it makes me want nothing more than to do the exact opposite and to pursue a career that involves healing and human connection and love and compassion. And so in that sense, his stories really did draw me to medicine. And when we look at the Holocaust, we see medicine and science at their very worst. We see just how powerful and destructive science and medicine can be if put in the wrong hands. Zyklon B, which is a cytochrome oxidase inhibitor, it's a biologically active molecule used and abused to kill millions of people. And it's so disturbing to me to think of a scientist working in the lab using the same scientific method that I'm so passionate about to create a compound that caused so much suffering. I wear a pin that says Zachor in Hebrew, which means remember. It's a word that's commonly associated with the Holocaust and Holocaust education in regards to remembering their stories and not letting something like this happen again. But I also wear it to remind myself of the sanctity of human life and to remember that the person with the appendicitis is not just an inflamed appendix. The person with the appendicitis is someone's mother or father, daughter or son, someone who needs to be treated with respect and dignity.